Lead the charge.
So, Jason Ribeiro here on the Lead the Charge podcast. Am I the only two-time appearance? Okay, yeah. So this is officially my pod now. So here's what we're going to talk about, folks. I'm honored to be here for a second time. Really timely, obviously, now that our summer is kicking off and we're right into the thick of basketball season. I've wore close to my Zeno best here today, but just it's great to be back. And I'm so impressed by just how much even just this channel has grown. You know, some great people on from a lot of different sectors, and it's something that I throw on in my car and listen. You know, Dan's a good friend that had you had him on, and a bunch of other folks that seemingly are our partners as well too. So through some backwards ways. So yeah, no, very, very happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, it's awesome to have you a second time. I think for us, it's a relationship that's only gotten better with time, which is something that we've learned in both the personal and the business sector, is that you shouldn't expect everything out of a relationship out of the get-go. You should allow it to be able to grow over time, and those are generally the ones that are going to be the best. And this is one of those relationships that I think we're seeing get its legs underneath it and turn into something pretty awesome.
Yeah, no, likewise. And I think, when I think back to year one, it was so much good faith, right, between us personally and then our teams and getting together, and knowing the kind of outsized punch above its weight impact that this partnership has been really special, and now it's real. And to be sitting here now for the second time in the office since we've inked a major extension, it's another opportunity for me to say thank you to you guys, not only for your belief in what we're building in the community, even as a business in the sports sector, but you've bet on Calgary, you've bet on youth, you've bet on basketball, and you've bet on families finding their way to our games or finding their way to you guys and putting it all together and saying, hey, this is how it's supposed to go. This is actually, it's not indifferent from what we've heard about the stories of lore of how energy companies in this town really partnered with the Flames in the early days, really supported the Stampeders in the early days. And to have remixed this, and I think in our own way, is really special for the community. And I think just given the scale of both organizations growing in tandem means that this is really meaningful for Calgary, but we know it's not just about Calgary. Now the names are growing broader than that. We're activating in new ways. And so it's such a great platform to, I think, draw more attention to solar solutions and what you guys are doing for climate and for homeowners, and what we're trying to do for kids and families, and our partners as well who want to grow their brand presence. So thank you.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty cool. What stuck out to me in all of that is the reality of what this is becoming. And the future is always exciting. The present is necessary, and the past is something that I think you have to either forget or honor, right? One's a choice and one's kind of necessary. What was the greatest thing that you feel that you learned over this last year?
Oh my God.
Maybe even a few things.
There's this, it was, look, I'm someone who's got a lot of, academic-y and educational credentials. There's no substitute for learning like we have over now close to 2 years, almost since that fateful day. I kind of screenshotted that press release and texted Usman and said, are we doing this? We're coming up on 2 years here, and it's been the greatest education. I think it's been the greatest education in terms of a new sector and a new business that we hadn't had prior experience in. We're obviously big advocates for sport and for youth, but pro sports and that media environment is a totally different kettle of fish. And I think that was some great learning. I think learning, we've got a number of other partners in different markets in the league, and feeling everyone out. This is a league that has, not only grown to Canada's largest domestic pro sports league, but now is majority privately owned. And so that changes the calculus on new voices to the table. And we know that those are all great, amazing things. But there's learning in how we all kind of bandy together in our own markets and figure out how we build something sustainably nationally. And then I think all the stuff that you've probably learned over time is just the growing pains of, the difference with us, I think, which was such a learning moment, is we were this kind of hybrid Borg, right? It was a previous franchise, so it was an existing thing, but that existing thing didn't really mean much in Calgary. So it was kind of startup, kind of acquisition of an existing franchise that really had no assets to it, right? It was like the name and likeness. We got the courts and the nets and 2 amazing staff members, but it's essentially a new business in an existing league that is still nascent, right? So the learning of just navigating startup mode, franchisee, all of those different things at once has been, looking back on it, I'm really proud that we got through that, navigating those kind of uncharted territories. But I think the last piece that I try and put top of mind, which is what you said, is that fundamental philosophy of adapt or die, right? In any startup mode, it's like one of my favorite movies is Moneyball. Mm-hmm. And I've returned to it, 20 times while I was finishing my PhD work and we were launching the team. But it's literally, there's this one moment where Brad Pitt is talking to a rather older scout who really is not happy with the fact that Billy Beane, the character Brad Pitt plays, was the GM of the Boston Red Sox, or at the time Oakland A's. And he's basically saying, you're going to discount what scouts have said for hundreds of years. You're going to throw away all the knowledge that you have about this game that you've dedicated your life to try something different. Good luck. You're going to get nowhere. And Brad does this perfectly. He literally looks at him and he goes, adapt or die. And literally claps exactly. And the amount of times I've done that over the last, 2 years almost is numerous. But that's it. Really, that's it when you're trying anything new. You have to abandon what doesn't work and sort of abandon that past and honor some of the time-old traditions that you think are going to carry you forward, or what your lived experience, our relationship. That's the kind of home base, not to mix my basketball and baseball metaphors, you come back to navigate through uncharted territory. And I'm just really proud that all that learning happened in such a short period of time for us to bring this in a way together to the community in a way that I know we're both proud of.
That's huge.
That's huge, yeah. What does that mean for season 2? Like, what are the things you're going to take from season 1 that kind of gets you into that next step?
Yeah, so I'll talk about 2 things, right? I'll talk about the business side and then just the kind of cultural vehicle that kind of Surge has become. I think on the business side, the reason we did this so quickly, and even our part of this, our partnership side, was done really quickly, was because we just knew objectively it was the right thing to do. And we will figure out the details later. And that's what year 1 was to us, right? We still, I don't think we reoriented our lives as much as we could to be able to account for a professional sports team now being on the desk, and how do you navigate all the things that we already had going on. So year 2 for us from a learning perspective is the year that we went deep as a business, was really understanding, hey, we're in launch mode. We got to get this out into the market. Is it going to be perfect? No. Are we going to learn a bunch? Yes. Are we going to make some mistakes? Yes. Are we going to make sure that we're mitigating against the mistakes that could be game enders? Yes. And we went through that whole year unscathed from one of those game ender conversations. But this was the year to go deep. And so understanding every facet of this business, going back and backfilling with our team, some of those cultural components, some of those communications components, some of the process has been really beautiful because I'm a processy kind of guy. So to get that off the hop has been really good for year 2. And then just to go deep in this partnership and figuring out how are we building for scale, not just in season 2, but season 3, 4, and 5, and what we've done in our extension. So I think that's really good. I think from a cultural vehicle perspective, because Surge, as much as it's our baby, it doesn't really belong to us now. Like, we've played games. The moment that kid and that family comes in and they put that jersey on and they're cheering for Rugsy or for Steph or Justin, for any of these guys that are returning in particular, it's theirs now. You don't own fandom, right? And so for year 2, it's really just putting that into overdrive. Now we know our fans. We're talking this language now that we can say with confidence the phrase our fans would like, or our fans would feel, or we've got enough of a baseline to go off of. And so that's been so special in going deep there. So in terms of the cultural side of what this Surge means to everyone, like, we thought in year 1 there was going to be this interlay with arts and culture. Music plays throughout the game. We've created a stage for performers in the venue, out on the plaza, at events that we do. this was the year that we really went deep there. So for year 2, for our encore performance, there's the double entendre, season 2 encore, but it's also this arts and culture sort of, the artist leaves the stage and they come back to the stage. That's where we're at. And so you're going to see an interlay with arts and culture that I think is quite aggressive, that I don't think, we're talking about orchestras, we're talking about fine arts collaborations, things that we teased year 1. We had the Calgary's Poet Laureate do our intro video. We had actors like Andrew Fung, our friend, do our voiceover for our hype reel. This was taking that to that next level. And the last point of going deep on the cultural side has been with youth. We were nervous year 1 to even put on a camp. I'm like, I can't go to parents if we don't know what this means. And I remember pulling off that first camp. It was during the season. I think we'd actually played some games, and just seeing, okay, we're ready now to go, go to parents, go to kids and say, hey, there's an exchange here. Not only will you leave with some skills, but you'll see our values because we wear them on our sleeve, and you'll see a bit of a bit of our soul, a bit of the entity, not just the cryo and the sparklers and all the bells and whistles. You'll see why we did this. Now, I think after, a really busy off season, we've gone really deep in that regard and formed a relationship with youth that was something we thought could be possible. But now when I see kids at Century Gardens in that court, it's real. Like that's, and now we just got to make sure we're not letting folks down. So that build up and now that maintenance and then incremental is really going to be indicative of our success for year 2.
That's amazing. And I think with that comes a cost though, right?
Yeah.
And we're talking about the success of the Surge. We're talking about the success of the entire CBL growing because of what the Surge is doing. But that cost comes at a human manner. And I think something that I've discovered as an individual as I've gotten older, especially once you have children, you really start to realize is how you do anything is how you do everything.
Yep.
And it doesn't matter like what it is that you're doing, that the consistency of who you are as a person, unless you have like a significant amount of stress, you're in survival mode, or you have some sort of debilitating sort of anxiety that's driving you kind of wonky, that rings true. And with that in mind, that mindset of how you do anything is how you do everything, I think I've personally been able to see that the quality of everything that you're trying to execute is done very consistently. And you're willing to take the risk to be able to try things, and sometimes they land flat, but that's part of the fail and grow mentality, which is the best. And that's ultimately and fundamentally the key aspect to being successful in sports. Now, with setting the stage with that tone, what was the cost to you over this last year? Like, what did having all of this come to life cost you?
Yeah, I think, the scale of this, organization, we were doing a tally exercise the other day, and it's, the numbers were 160, 170, from zero, right? From a text message between 2 people that didn't really know anything about professional sports other than being fans, to now 160, 70, 80 people that we're responsible for. I like to think of it as the collective sacrifice, right? And I've seen you guys do this. The how you do, one thing is how you do everything, or the inverse. And it's, I think my mentality is like, there's not going to be a thing that I ever ask you to do that I haven't done or that I'm not willing to do beside you. And I think in year 1, the trust was, it doesn't matter everything else that we have going on. It doesn't matter. I had a son that, I'm very actively, involved in. I think I talked about that on the first pod. Now we've added a second. And it was important for me to show up to them, and this couldn't change. I remember when I had to tell my wife, not had to, but I chose to, as I tell her everything, when I told her that we were, thinking of bringing this team to Calgary, I don't think she put it into context, but she just said, like nothing can change, right? Like it's just, I just come off of a long leave with my son. She's just like, his routine, what we've built, what we've protected from a family life perspective can't really change. And I think she knew some of it would, like, I'm going to come in and I'll have a headphone in and I'll be on the phone, or I'll have to leave a little bit early. But the fundamentals of, you know, driving my son to school, picking him up, you know, doing the bedtime routine or doing the dishes, like whatever we'd structured couldn't change. But I go back to that collective cost. I think that's startup mode, right? When you're trying to do everything, and you have to do everything because you want to show up to the community in a way, you got to push. And so, yes, that was a personal sacrifice. I don't think I've ever slept less, but I know that I probably pushed a lot of our team to, you know, the brinks of, they've never slept less. And I think you when you're doing that collectively, when you're doing that together, like, you know, I'll flip the question back on you guys in a minute. But when you're doing it together, you just don't feel alone. So it makes you feel as though, okay, yeah, I'm groggy, I'm tired. Maybe no one feels outside of this org what I'm doing, but people in the org know what we're doing, because they're showing up every day with me. I remember, you know, that you guys were there when we shut down the Peace Bridge. It was, you know, wild actually when I think back that we did that. But we're taking the photos and everything like that, and it was probably 2 days away from the home opener. And I remember, you know, leaving Jesse, our manager of creative and brand, and I was like, yeah, I'll call you in an hour. And it was like 3 a.m. and we were like on the phone, like figuring out the photo and doing that kind of stuff. There's hundreds of those anecdotes. And so I'm just grateful for the collective sacrifice that, yeah, people, you know, competed on the court for the Surge, but people competed in the office. People competed in the community. And I think everyone left that year better for it, found a new gear and a new level. And the cost was time. The cost was sort of, you know, well-being in a certain perspective in terms of you just putting your body through a lot and your mind through a lot. But just like anything at the end of a season, you come back and you're like, was the sacrifice worth it? Yes or no? You know, every one of those staff members is still a staff member. Or every one of those players that wanted to come back is still a player that we've signed. And so my flip back to you guys is, you know, you guys do this all the time. The cost of what you guys have done, not only on the business side, but also what you guys are doing to raise funds. So the strides context, you know, the amount of marathons that you guys have run, the Ironman sort of training that you guys have gone through, what's been the cost on your side? Because I've at least sort of, you know, mitigated the physical. So yeah, not sleeping, I'll do my own, but like you guys are literally, you know, trying to operate the business with your team, and then you're bringing in your staff to run these marathons and to do all of those things. How's that cost been for you? Because that's not a typical thing that most companies do. What's been the buy-in for you guys in terms of that physical and, you know, sort of office work or, you know, on the rooftop work?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think we can obviously split this here, but there's a few aspects to it. I think one of the biggest, it might be an issue, I think, with entrepreneurship, and you probably get this too, is there's an addiction, right, to want more. I think that a lot of times with these challenges is that you find that something isn't challenging enough, so you look for the next big challenge. And I think for us, there was so much sacrifice made for the company. I would say probably for the first, like, we just passed year 9, so I'd say like 7.
Congrats,
really 7. Thank you. Probably 7 years was like legit. You're sacrificing everything for the business. And I think throwing that marathon on top of it in year 3 or 4, like year 3, 5, yeah. It made it seem normal again. It's weird to say that, but it almost brings like a normality to it, because it was something that was like, okay, work is hard, everything's hard, but then you throw something on top of it that almost takes your mind off of it and allows you to do something else that makes the day-to-day seem easy again. And so I think it's pushing yourself, and then as a leader to the team is showing them that it's possible, right? I think a lot of people look at it as like business, it's hard to run a business, it's hard to grow a team. But then if you can do more, can take that extra step, a lot of individuals want to be a part of that. They want to be a part of something bigger. We found that a lot of people enjoy it, and I think they see that we push our limits, like, you know what, that's super cool, we can do that as well. So yeah, that's kind of how I look at that. And then again, it's probably a curse at one point. You start to look for that next thing, right? Like for me, the Ironman ideally is my final one, unless I can do something on Mars, like run a marathon or something. Yeah. So like the Ironman for me was that like one thing.
I'm painfully sitting one.
Yeah. Hold that clip.
Yeah. No. So I think for that one, it's just like searching for that challenge, that next thing, and business will bring that to you in certain aspects. But I think it's not in all aspects of life, and the physical side is so much different. it's such a different way of going about it, a different pain, a different mental battle. And you learn so much about yourself and about the surroundings around you. So yeah, that's kind of what I would say.
I think the way that I look at this is in segments. And in the way that I segment things out is based on a perspective. The first one is the journey. So when going through these types of things in life, such as like building a business and then adding something into the mix that might exceed expectations or standards, I liken it to being able to see a view. Now, when you're early on in the business, let's assume the business is climbing a mountain and you're trying to get up the initial portion to reach the first summit. All you see is your hands and your feet and the rocks in front of you. That's all you can see. And sometimes the slopes are really steep. Sometimes they level off a little bit, but you can always feel the pain in your legs. You can always feel that weight that you're carrying with you. And I think that's what the early stages of things are. Now, the problem is once you reach the first summit, you're so excited that you reached there, the pressure is left off of your body, and all you're doing is scrambling and looking around endlessly to be able to capture all the moments that are happening around you. And in that moment, though you get to enjoy it just for a second, you really quickly realize that you've only reached the first summit and there's still a lot of the mountain left. And simultaneously, you know the pain behind you is only going to get worse as you're heading towards the next summit. So that's what this whole experience basically is that in life, when you choose to do something, you have an opportunity to design difficulty into your life.
Right.
And for us, I think that's what the strides is, that's what the marathons are, that's what the Ironman is, and so on and so forth. I don't believe Kai. I know he's going to do something harder just knowing who he is as a person. And I'm happy that you're that way, by the way. It's not by any means something that I think is an issue. I just hope maybe he'll Paul Walker himself out of this situation, right? Like, and if that happens, and whatever, that's a great life lived, right? I hope not. I hope long lives for all of you guys. Yeah. But going back to the point is that in life is going to be hard no matter what. Life is going to be challenging no matter what. Now, those two things shouldn't be categorized as bad things. They should be categorized as good things. Oh, something's going to be hard? Great. I'm excited about that. Something's going to be challenging? Amazing. I'll learn new skills. And when you start taking that into consideration and start designing it into your life all of a sudden and ironically becomes easier. And I believe that's what these things have done for us, is that climbing of the mountain, the scraping of your fingers, the tearing of your muscles and so on and so forth as you're climbing to be able to reach that next summit, all of a sudden became enjoyable because we designed it into our lives. Right. And the last piece is what ends up happening once you do reach that peak. It's weird. It's weird. And I think for us, we've hit a few peaks over the years, I would say, where we don't know what to do next. And luckily we have each other, right? And even in this situation, we have you as well too, where we're like, hey, we did the Calgary Surge, now what?
Right.
And we came and we sat down with you and we're like, what should we do here? And I think that's ultimately what ends up happening is that you can do one of two things in life. You can reach that peak and you can look around and be like, okay, I want more of X, Y, and Z. I want to go to a higher peak and get a better view, or I want to go to a lower peak and get a different perspective. From my perspective and the way that I look at things is that once I get to that peak, I want to be able to share with people what I've seen.
Yep.
And I want to share with other individuals what I think that they could ultimately achieve, or simultaneously talk to other people. And this is where the real sauce is. Talk to other people who have been there before and ask them what they saw when they reached that point. And fundamentally, from that point, I then make a decision of whether or not I want to pursue the next peak or I want to park myself in that one for as long as possible to be able to truly understand what it means. And I believe that's what my perspective of, what you've experienced over this last little while is what my experience is at Zeno.
Yeah, no, I think that's well put. And it reminds you of the responsibility, right? Like I think through, we always hear these very dramatic stories of entrepreneurs or business leaders and on the early days of a company and sometimes the very sort of, lonely walk that they take to be able to build something big and bring people along to help them scale that. But what the inverse of that scenario is that I always kind of remind myself of is, the surge having not existed before, and now having gone through a season where I've been able to see these faces, been able to see these people. We've been able to do the fan engagement where we know how many people have never had season tickets to a sporting event in a great sports city before. How many people from our Surge Assist program, the nearly 1,000 kids and deserving families that would have had, sort of very little opportunity to be able to attend one of these games, even though their children are ride or die, basketball fans. How if this team didn't exist, they never would have had that experience in their home city. And if we didn't have this program, they wouldn't have been able to get in the door. And I remind myself of the inverse scenario to what we're talking about, which is, like the sacrifice is, for that person and for that family, that, the challenge that they're taking on is the drip one. It's showing up every single day to that job. It's showing up every single day and scraping by and trying to stitch things together to live a great Canadian life, to live a great life in the city. It's the bus driver, it's the oil field worker, it's the receptionist, it's the nurse, it's and the responsibility that we have in whatever collective sacrifice all of us are making is to provide joy for those 2 hours on that Thursday or that Saturday, to come and just kind of, like you said, for the team, it allows you to kind of just check out a bit and just experience joy. And that public trust is something that's not lost on us. I remember it's a funny anecdote about, from a business perspective. I remember when we were sort of designing what WinSport was going to look like, because they'd never been the home venue to a pro sports team before. And I remember they were, some big signs that we bought just out front of the venue. And so much of what we've done over time has kind of bucked the trend of, marketing 101 or advertising 101. So advertising 101 would have meant that, okay, we got, these big signs all in front of the doors of WinSport, and they're up year round. So people are going to see them as they drive by. WinSport has a sports school, hockey programming, para programming, skiing. Put a basketball player up there, put a ticket price, really affordable, sexy price, and make sure that everyone knows that there's a basketball team here, etc. And that seems so conventional to us. And we said, well, people are going to find their way here. If we're doing our job right, people are going to find their way here. People are going to understand what we're trying to build. Why don't we communicate with the people that are already here? What's the investment that they need? What's going to fill their tank? What's going to fill their soul? And I remember it was like, we're going to say welcome home. This is our new home. And for the time being, that's not changing. And let's put it in all the different languages that are most commonly spoken in Calgary. And for the casual person, we sacrifice that. For the casual person that walks by, they're not going to know what Surge, there's a very subtle imprint of a basketball there. But they're not going to know. But for the people that do find their way to those games, they will know. And that investment, that public trust of being able to communicate with them, and again, provide that joy or that relief to say, hey, I'm coming to a venue for the first time, coming to see this team, and I'm welcomed and I'm included, and people thought to communicate with me in a way that would make me feel part of something bigger. That's worth every sort of confused moment for the person that doesn't understand, is this a nonprofit? Is this some newcomers agency? Every single moment of confusion is worth that, to be able to communicate to the people that do show up to those games and know that they feel welcome. So it's a when we talk about these sacrifices that are made, that's who the sacrifices are for. It's for the people on the other end of that ticket in that bowl, and then certainly for our families and for our staffs that are buying into that vision and saying, hey, they're not pushing back when we say it's got to say welcome home. They're like, we're all in. That's who we got to communicate with, and those are the really special moments.
Yeah, I think the beauty of that in its truest form is one of the greatest burdens that I think the three of us carry as individuals is the burden of leadership. And I think the most beautiful life that you can live on this earth is one in which you, live a good life in regards to finding a nice 9-to-5, doing something that you have that's reasonable, that you make decent money, that you can go on the vacations that you want to, and you get to live the Canadian dream. I think the reality of what we have here is sometimes underrated, of what we have as a country, and the reality of what individuals like yourself have to do in order to be able to make these things come to life is grueling. And what I'm specifically talking about is that when you're in a role of leadership, to be able to bring these things to life, to be able to make that choice, to be able to create that level of confusion, or from my perspective, what I see is like marketing genius, right? Is that you're driving curiosity in a roundabout way, right? Is that as a leader, you know something that the people that you're serving don't. And you have to keep that to yourself and be as patient with them as possible, knowing that they will eventually come to the realization, and you're not allowed to tell them because it's your responsibility to guide them kindly.
Right. No, that's really well put. That gentle guidance of being able to see is such an interesting thing, right? Because you kind of know, or you think you know at least, and there's going to be a lot of learning on the way, but it's how you bring people to that very gently. Because again, it's that adapt or die moment, right? That's not an instinctive thing. Like, it's not a natural thing. There's always an aversion to kind of change or to difference in some cases, and so that gentle guidance is important. But the other side to it is, what's the reward to that? The reward is, as painstaking as some of these things are, as grueling as some of these things are, what a life! Like, come on, like this is
it's pretty cool.
Yeah, like this is sort of Kai's always favorite phrase, like life's a joke. Like, it's just like, what a life! Like I think about my parents often, in the sacrifice that they made coming to this country, and to be in a position, for better or worse, warts and all over, the 34 years of life that I've had, they made a big sacrifice and a big change to move across this planet, to start a life in Canada, meet each other, form a family, with the sole sort of very easy premise that their children will have a better life than they did. Because my parents, sort of not particularly sort of well educated in terms of conventional schooling, sort of rough and tumble, sort of experience in Canada in the early days. You just want that for your children, that they live a better life. The notion that their two sons, were able to go to university and again do all the things academically that they didn't have the luxury of doing, and then this very visceral, weird thing that I'm involved in, which is connected to growing sport not only in this home city but across the country, and having this team. What a life! And it's rooted in real sacrifice. So that's I guess my landing of the plane here. That sacrifice is everywhere, right? And it's where we choose to see it and where we choose to acknowledge it, and then sometimes where we choose to put it out of our mind and just be in the moment of saying, it's kind of fun, it's kind of cool, and definitely worth every single second of whatever's grueling. Because there's a lot that's grueling in this life, but there's very few that get the spoils of that on the other side of that, that investment delivering that return. And the outsized return is, I get this very, unique perspective looking around and seeing kids in jerseys and families together, and looking up at that sign and people saying, oh, like that's different, or satisfying that curiosity in some ways. There's also that benefit to it, and I think that's what I'm so proud of you guys. And I think I said this on the first time I was on the podcast. You guys have the responsibility from the climate side. It's huge. So I've got this responsibility here in gathering thousands of people, families, and from all backgrounds in Calgary. But you guys have that responsibility on the climate side, and you guys have that burden of leadership in that space as well. But the joy I think that brings to say, like, you guys get to go to work every day with this staff that you have that's incredible, knowing that they're contributing in a positive way, in a way that's also culturally sound, I would argue, and that it's not fell into the trappings of the very easy dismissals or critiques. It's just very good business, very good sort of customer relations, is also special in your road. How do you guys feel about the joy of being on the other side of saying, hey, in this moment in time, and I get to do that by proxy, because I get to say, hey, you know who our title sponsor is? Like, this is how we're contributing in a very real way, because that was a choice. We made that, and we knew the significance of that choice. I go back to, the major sports teams and what propelled them to new heights, from the more conventional energy business. Now having the title sponsor for this team be a residential solar solutions company is crazy. So how does that, do you guys get that moment to feel that joy and on the other side of that responsibility?
Yeah, but it happens in a weird way.
Okay.
For for me, it's all about the people is what it comes down to, is what I've realized over time. The accomplishments, the awards, all these other things are nice, but it comes down to the progression of the individuals and how they've been able to rise to the occasion. And we'll do anything for our people. The best example is, there's many, but there's the best examples that we have that's quite consistent throughout Zeno, is individuals that started somewhere and are significantly further along in regards to what they're doing and the responsibilities they have, whether that be the assets that they manage or the individual teams that they manage and how far they've come. And for me, what that moment looks like to be able to really bring it to life is a journey. And ironically enough, it's going back to that mountain situation, is that when we first started out, it was survival mode. We need to do this to be able to achieve this. Our clients need this. That was the driving force. And then it became, okay, I can't do this anymore because my attention is needed somewhere else. I'm going to train somebody else to do this. And then you have that relationship with an individual. And the first piece is survival. The second piece is frustration, is that, man, this person is not necessarily as good as I am at this. And I need to be patient with them to be able to make sure that they get there. And you try your best to be as patient. And obviously frustrations come to the surface. And you as a leader get that opportunity to do one of two things, is that you continue investing in that individual, or you allow your frustrations to get the better of you and you become a sole proprietor.
Right.
Now, we never wanted that. We wanted to continue scaling the business. So we knew we had to give them the best chance possible. And what that typically looks like is you either bring in more people to help those individuals out, or you give yourself up to be able to help those individuals out. And we've both done both of those things. So it was originally survival, and then it was frustration, and then it's admiration. Is that a lot of these individuals have reached the point where they've actually they've rose to the equation or the requirement of what the equation needed to be able to be satisfied. And we get to sit there in some of those meetings and I look at some of these people and they're younger than us, and I'm like, man, this is so cool. Like, I can't believe this person is speaking to this level about this. I don't know what they're talking about anymore.
Right.
Like, I'm in a position now where I'm kind of just observing, and I'm so happy that they got to this level, and that my effort and Kai's effort, whoever else's effort of nurturing these individuals has gotten them to this point. I think the second piece, and to add to this in relation to what you were talking about earlier on, about your responsibility to the people and creating that confusion, or what I called, that marketing genius mechanism, is that you want people to feel like they're at home. Right. So it's about listening to your people as well too. Do they want better benefits? Are they looking for more vacation time? Do they want to work from home? Do they want a better office chair? Are they looking for a widescreen monitor? What is it? What is it that you're actually looking for that's going to make your life just a little bit better and a little bit more comfortable? Because I hate to say this, the reality is that everybody's got to work. Right. And if somebody's saying, man, I got a lot of work, then you should actually be grateful for that. You shouldn't be complaining about that. That's exactly the whole idea of work, right? You should have a lot of it. But from our perspective, though that's the case, and we know that that's the reality, it's how do you modulate that it is just the right amount that the person feels fulfilled but not burnt out. And so to be able to bring that arc like full circle is that it's wonderful. It's wonderful, and it's not something that's lost on me personally, but it's something that doesn't necessarily happen as frequent because we're not involved in the day-to-day. And the burden that Kai and I currently carry is the burden of expansion and continuing to hit that goal of 1 billion home or 1 million homes.
I was going to say, hold that.
No, cut that. 1 billion, holy.
In fact, 1 billion lives. We got to get to 1 million homes. But that burden of getting to 1 million homes is that we have a really interesting thing happening, is that we're starting to have the conversations in regards to, are we capable as individuals to keep up with the requirements of the organization? Right now, I would say absolutely. But the ability to be able to step back and be, I hate to say this, because as soon as you say be humble enough, then are you actually a humble individual? It's a paradox, right? Is that, can you be humble enough to know that, hey, I can no longer serve the company's needs in regards to what the company currently needs? Right. And so, it's really interesting, because as much as you want to enjoy the moment, you simultaneously have to step outside of it and make sure that you're actually playing the right role.
Yeah. What about you?
Yeah, it's a good summary. For me, I think it's something I always go back to when I try to embrace a moment that happened within the company. So one of my biggest memories is when we moved to Canada. So when I was 5.5, I remember, and there's a picture too, I remember standing in front of the container and there's all of our stuff in there and closing those doors. And I remember looking at my parents and I just realized that like nothing will actually be hard ever in my life. And I think for me, the reason I say that is because it's kind of what you said. What they did for me and for my sister to be able to give us the life that we have, it was something I realized that if I look at those moments, that when I achieve certain milestones, one of the things I like to do as an individual is I like to envision. I like to see the end. So like, we'll take, for example, the Ironman. I can see myself at the end under 12 hours, right? That's what I envision when I'm going through the pain. And I think that every single time I hit a milestone, I look back at what would that kid that was standing there in front of that container, what would he say and what would he do and how would he take that moment? And I think that's been something that's allowed me to actually enjoy those moments, because one of the biggest issues is that you don't enjoy them. You go through, and you go through 9 years, which is a crazy amount of time in business, and you go through the different things. You go through that we're sponsoring a professional basketball team. Like, that's probably, I don't know how many kids' dreams that is, right? Like, that's huge. And I think you don't actually embrace those moments and you don't get to take them in. So for me, it goes back to you saying this as well, is that life's a joke, is that I actually get to embrace that. I get to have fun doing it, and I get to see what that little Kai that was standing there and what would he feel. And so for me, that's how I look back at things, and that's how I try to enjoy those moments, and then tie it back into kind of the business side of things and the people. We grew up in a energy province, right? Where energy is our pretty much our bread and butter here in Alberta, and I think we both worked in it. We both got to see it, and we both knew that there was something that would be bigger, and there was something that could help diversify the portfolio here in Alberta. And I think we both knew what kind of that burden was on us and what we had to do towards that. And so when we had the opportunity to get into the solar space and to be able to grow that here in Alberta and have our name again on that jersey, have our name supporting kids sports, say Nate, whatever it is, like, we get to have our name beside that, and it's renewable energy. It's not oil and gas, right? And again, oil and gas is great, and we know what it's done and what it has to do, but we see that beside it. And I think it just gives that impact of, we're doing something that's so much bigger than us, that actually has nothing to do with what we feel, and it's actually impacting the whole globe, right? It's Canadians, it's Albertans, it's the world. Like, it's us as humans that we're helping solve a huge problem. And like you said, it ties in great with the sports side of things and what you're doing, and then obviously what we're trying to do. So yeah, I think it's really enjoying the journey of what we've kind of built, and having those moments where you can look back and just see what you've done and actually enjoy it. Because one of the biggest issues that I've found is that you really, really don't enjoy those, right? You take it for granted what you kind of can do and the things you can do in a short period of time. Again, even for you, like, you guys are 2 years in and you have 170 people or whatever, the number that you said there. That's crazy. Like, that's amazing that you've helped that many individuals get to a position where they can work for something that they believe in, right? Mm-hmm. And like you said, everyone has to have a job and you have to work to get by and pay your bills, but you can do it how you want, right, on your own terms, and you can create that life that you want to live. So yeah, I think that's how I would summarize it in kind of a jumbled way, but that's how it works for me.
Amazing.
Yeah. Hell.
Am I still hosting? No, I think that's a good place to sort of close on. Is yep. That I think this has been such a special thing from the start, and I still think we're just scratching the surface. Like, that's what's most exciting to me, is really thinking about scale, and I think this extension that we've signed is really figuring out what scale looks like, right? And we know there's going to be more fans, more kids, more awareness. All of that's going to be more. But I think the underlying curiosity, even for our side, is, yeah, but what are those actual things that underpin more? Because you can always get more, and that's where you can kind of get out of balance because it becomes addictive. But I think the funnest part of the next few years is just, I look at this season and thinking about, yeah, there's certainly more, there's scale, but it was the other partnerships that we've struck. It was going deep in certain places where we were discovering and learning new things. And I think that's going to be the case for your business, clearly, but also our partnership. And I know just with the ambitions that you guys have, that more is going to be really thought out and really strategic. And so, yeah, it's been a heck of a, close to 2 years now. But just really excited for that future and understanding that with each moment in time, like you guys celebrated 9 years, like with each moment in time, you become further cemented in the psyche of people. You become further cemented in the bones of a city. I think that's really impactful for us. I remember on the last pod, talked about I live this very charmed life where the majority of my affiliations had the word Calgary in it. It was like University of Calgary, Global Calgary, Sport Calgary, Calgary Surge. That's not a given. And now for this institution, the emphasis less being on Calgary, because people just know what the Surge is, and people know and they feel it. Even if they haven't come to a game yet, they know someone who has, and they know how they need to tee up their schedule for next summer and after that, or we activated at a community center or a mosque, or, insert name here of some organization or some event or some location. That's that part of it. I think when you realize, and that's what, you just said about seeing the name somewhere, the part where you realize you don't have to push as much anymore, that it just flows. You've done all the process work, but then it just flows. I think that's what's happening sooner than we've thought. And so, yeah, year 2, our Encore performance is really going to be about, the work was laid out in the off season. There's still going to be more work to do. That's why you're in this, to work. But the moments where we get to let it flow are going to be the really exciting moments for us, where we kind of show up, we observe, we see these amazing staff members of us who, for the first time in professional sports, they're leaning in and leading camps and, speaking on behalf of the organization. I remember Ryan in our office, he came to me, as a funny anecdote. He came to me one day and he said, "Hey, there's been a request for this youth council at the library, and they're pulling together a group of people to speak. And it's a panel." And I said, instinctively, I said, "Yeah, I was in the middle of something." I said, "Yes, put it in my calendar. I'll figure it out, whatever." And he said, "Yeah, cool." And then he walked out, and then I just paused for a moment. And this is the letting it flow moment. He's walking out of my office. I said, "Hey, Ryan." He said, "Yeah." I said, "Do you want to speak on that panel?" And he hasn't done really much speaking. And he said, "I would love it." I said, "Done." Like these let it flow moments of, now we've gone through it and realizing people are able to fulfill their potential. It's super special. And to do that 1,000 times for 1,000 people, or 3,000 or 10,000, life's a joke. That's what I have to say. So yeah, thank you for your partnership. We're excited to close out the rest of the season 2 here. And just again, thank you guys for all your support.
Thank you. It's easy.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't think there's anything else that we can add to that. That's another episode of Lead the Charge. I know I'm stealing the hosting rights back.
Do I have to give you my outfit? You have to change outfits back.
I do like your outfit. I wouldn't mind taking it. But no, for those who are listening, I think there's one call to action that we'll leave you with, is that if you haven't been to a Surge game, or it's something that you're interested in, reach out to us. We have all our different channels. Is it calgarysurge.ca or livezeno.com. Ideally, you'll be able to navigate your way towards the website that'll get you to tickets. And yeah, join us this year. There's quite a few games left in the season, and it's an amazing time. I'd like to say it's my favorite sports experience that I've been able to go to so far. And it's going to continue getting better and better. But join early so that you can be part of the history that this team is making in the city, and the impact that it's starting to make across the country as well too. We're happy to have you, and thanks again for joining us, Jason. It's been an awesome conversation as usual.
No, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks. That was awesome. And then for everyone watching, like, share, subscribe, share with your friends. It'd be greatly appreciated. Thank you.